Good evening and welcome to the Traditions Week's concert series here at Common Ground on the Hill. My name is Walt Michael. I'm the artist in residence at McDaniel College and the founder of Common Ground on the Hill. 26 years ago, I moved back to my native Maryland after 25 years of being a folk musician traveling throughout the world. I returned to Maryland to found this organization that teaches the traditional arts while fostering dialogue between people and cultures that find themselves in conflict with one another. Our very first summer gathering was entitled Traditions, Black and White, where we sought to examine our nation's troubled racist history through the lens of the arts and hopefully move the needle in our communities toward greater understanding and change. Well, here we are 25 years later, still trying to move that needle. George Floyd and countless other victims of police brutality remind us that our work remains unfinished. Tonight's concert is entitled Common Ground on the Hill's Search for Racial Justice Through Story and Song. Our MC for this evening is Tim Porter from the Common Ground on the Hill Board of Directors. A native Marylander and highly successful attorney, Tim has lived in Manhattan for many, many years. He's an avid mandolinist with wide-ranging musical interests. He's the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the National Jazz Museum in Harlem, and he presents there and develops innovative courses. He lectures and performs in the US and Europe and regularly performs with the Contemporary Ensemble in New York. Tim has performed with jazz greats such as Ronnie Ben-Hur and Steve Williams, as well as with a number of the wonderful traditional musicians you'll hear tonight. Tim serves on the boards of WBGO Newark Public Radio, the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music in New York, the New School University, and formerly served as chair on the board of the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago. We are honored to have had Tim Porter on our teaching faculty for almost 2 decades. This summer, he teaches beginning mandolin, jazz, mandolin and guitar, and migration sketches, music of the diaspora. Make welcome your MC for the evening, Tim Porter.
Thank you very much, Walt. Thank you. I'm really delighted to be the MC for tonight's concert. It's really a special concert featuring, among some others, some of the extraordinary artists in and on the faculty of Common Ground on the Hill. Now, all of this is in tribute to Black Lives Matter and in furtherance of understanding, dialogue, and justice. Before introducing our first artist, I'd like to mention 3 things. First, the artists that you'll see and hear this evening represent part of the astounding breadth of music and other art forms reflecting the African-American experience and the musical diversity of what is sometimes referred to as the African diaspora. Secondly, music and the arts generally have and have always had an important place and role in our civil rights struggles and movements for social justice, as witnessed in the works of, Paul Robeson, Odetta, Marian Anderson, Romar Bearden, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, Ossie Davis, and Ruby Dee, and many others. Thirdly, I'd like to say that I come by my appreciation for this singular, this unique role of music and the arts, beginning with some early professional involvements when I was a very young man. In that regard, this year marks the 50th anniversary of the publication of a book entitled We Speak as Liberators, Young Black Poets. It was published in 1970, and it was published by Dodd Mead and Company and edited by Ord Coons. It was groundbreaking for its time and included the works of many writers who went on to become very well known. People like Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Pearl Clage, Stanley Crouch, Quincy Troop, to name but a few. I was fortunate to have also been included among those writers 50 years ago. And you'll find my work beginning on page 138. The title of the book underscores a major role for music and art generally, namely to be a catalyst for liberation, to be a catalyst for freedom, to be a catalyst for thinking. Following publication of the book, I took some time off from law school and worked for 2 years at a Black theater company called the the Negro Ensemble Company in New York City, where among the many gifted playwrights, actors, musicians, directors, scenic designers, costume designers, lighting designers, and stage managers that I encountered, I had the good fortune of meeting one Ossie Davis, an icon in many fields, whose son, Guy Davis, I now count among my dear friends, and whom you'll hear a little later. I'll add that while I was there, the company produced a play called The River Niger, a powerful play about the Black experience that went on to win the Tony Award in 1974 for Best Play. I mention these things only to underscore the role and significance of art in all of its forms and how its early impact can have lifelong importance. Now, with all of that, by way of some introduction, I'd like to and am delighted to introduce our first artist for this evening, Sparky and Rhonda Rucker. Sparky and Rhonda Rucker sing songs and tell stories from the American folk tradition. Sparky has been performing for more than 50 years and accompanies himself with fingerstyle picking and bottleneck blues guitar. Their music includes a variety of old-time music, Appalachian music, slave songs, spirituals, as well as originals. And I should mention that Rhonda's new historical novel, Welcome to Bombingham, is a gritty portrayal of teenage African Americans confronting vicious white supremacy in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. Sparky and Rhonda's music is included on the Grammy-nominated anthology, Singing Through the Hard Times. I give you Sparky and Rhonda.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad to be a part of this. You know, I gave a lot of thought as to what I wanted to play tonight. I thought I'd draw on that background that I've had from the civil rights movement, but then last night I was reading an introduction to the Frederick Douglass Papers version of My Bondage, My Freedom. And I saw a statement where this reviewer of the book said, "The blues is the poetry of slavery." And I thought about the fact that it has been the way to express how we felt as being Black in America, in a land based on freedom and yet and still having to share second-class citizenship. And how the only way we could express how we felt was through music. So I'll give you this song. Trouble in mind, I'm blue, but I won't be blue always. You know the sun is gonna shine my back door someday. I could use a little help singing this song. Everybody sing it with me. Trouble in but I won't be blue always. You know the sun is gonna shine my back door someday. Gonna lay my head on some lonesome railroad line and let the 219 Boogaloo Lord satisfy my mind. You know what I'm talking about. Trouble in mind, I'm blue, but I won't be blue always. takes us. We're gonna have to rock on away from here. Come on now. Trouble in mind. I'm blue, but I won't be blue always. You know the sun is gonna shine in my back door. I said the sun is gonna shine in my back door. Sun's gonna shine in my back door someday.
That was beautiful. Sparky and Rhonda Rucker, that was terrific. My God. And the blues is the poetry of slavery. Trouble in mind, and yet there is always some optimism, because the sun's gonna shine in my back door someday. Our next guest is not a musician. He is a PhD and an associate professor of sociology at McDaniel, but he is a great lover of the arts. And he's going to say a few words about the role of music and the arts, music historically in the civil rights movements. So, Richard M. Smith, you're now on.
Thank you, Tim. It was Dr. King who said that music played a strong and vital role in our struggle. To give the people new courage, a sense of unity, they keep alive a faith, a radiant hope in the future, and particularly in our most trying hours. When talking about the African-American experience and the ongoing fight for civil rights, music, dance, literature, other art forms served and continue to serve a great purpose in the struggle. From songs such as the '60s Civil Rights Anthem, We Shall Overcome, to Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddamn, to Public Enemy's Fight the Power, to Janelle Monáe's Hell You Talking About, music and art in general was not only meant to inspire, but to send messages, to celebrate, to encourage, but also as a tool of resilience and a form of resistance. There's a story about when Tennessee State Police tried to close down Highlander Folk School for nonviolent activist training in 1959. And it was a Black high school student that started singing and led a new verse to We Shall Overcome, started singing We Are Not Afraid. See, it was oftentimes, and even dance, comedy, literature, have been used as tools of resistance. It was Du Bois in this brief text called The Superior Race, where referencing the Black experience, he says, art is not simply works of art. It is the spirit that knows beauty, that has music in its soul and the color of sunsets in its handkerchiefs, that can dance on a flaming world, make the world dance too. And then he says, such is the soul of the Negro. So music and other art forms have great and always had a great purpose in the struggle, in this ongoing struggle for civil rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. That was wonderful. Songs, music, messages, resistance, and stories. Always stories and more stories. Such an important part of the tradition of African-American culture. Our next guest is a unique artist. She's a storyteller. She comes from a highly gifted tradition. She's been performing since she was 8 years old. She lives in Hampton, Virginia, and presents storytelling programs, historic character presentations, Christian monologues, professional development for educators, and inspirational motivational speaking, schools, churches, and organizations. Sheila Arnold, or Sheila, Miss Sheila, as she is fondly called, has been performing full-time since 2003 and travels nationally every year. She was selected as a 2019-20 Mount Vernon Research Fellow and as an artist residence at Jumoke Artist Colony. Please make welcome Sheila Arnold.
Good evening, everyone. It's so good to be here and to be with my friends, even though they're long distance. I've had lots of conversations about where we are today and lots of stories I'd like to tell. But I suppose the one that comes to mind is the one about a story with a time with my son. My son is 34 years old. His name is Christopher. And during this time of pandemic, he has had my car and I've been at home as an artist, not doing anything except waiting for him to pick up groceries or pick me up to go someplace. But then we had the death of George Floyd. And in the death of George Floyd, we began to have conversations. We talked about him going to one of the protests. He talked about the fact that he felt like he really needed to be there. It was the first protest of any sort that he had been in. And it reminded me of being in the protest in Washington, D.C. at the time where we were trying to get Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday to be a holiday. So we talked about what the roles were now. And he admitted that he knew that some people came for revenge and others came for unity. And I talked to him about his job now as 34. He was growing to that point where he would need to not just be a leader, but also to talk to those that were younger than him and help them find their way. It was a good conversation. And then my son said something to me, because you see, as the mother of a Black son, of a Black child, I have had the talk. If you're not certain what the talk is, it's that time where I tell my son how to react when the police will stop him, how to react when he is pulled over, how to respond and speak or not speak, how to move his hands carefully, how to be respectful and be clear and articulate, to make sure that he's slow with his movements all along. I'm telling him these things about how to live. But I knew that I had to tell my son these things. That even when he was young and he felt like he would never use this, and as he got to be a teenager and he saw that his white friends had to not know this, I still had to tell him again and again. And only over time, as he began to be stopped for whatever reason, just driving a nicer car, his grandfather's car, or for running down the block of his grandfather's street, jogging, that he learned that he needed all that talk. But this time, he looked at me and he said, "Mom, you know that talk?" I said, "Yeah." "I'm realizing something else in that talk, Mommy." It's all right. He said, "Mom, when you told me how to act, how to be careful with what I say, how to live, I realize now you took away my voice." I was stunned. It was like a ball hitting me in the chest, flat on. I didn't want to do that to my son. I wanted him to be able to speak. I wanted him to be able to tell the world how wonderful he was. I was not trying to stop him from having a voice. I was trying to, and I began to speak, to say, "I'm sorry." And he said, "No, Mom, don't. I know what you're trying to do. I'm a dad now too. But what I had lost was my voice, because I wasn't the one that could say, 'Sir, why are you stopping me? Sir, why do I have to get out of the car? Sir, I am going to be filming this. Sir, this is what I'm going to do.'" I couldn't speak. I looked at my son, this young man who had done so good, who was a good father and a good worker, who has tried his life to do what is right. And even the mistakes he's made, he's overcome them. And I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry because I knew that he was like a story I had read long ago. And I didn't have to tell all of the story or remember all the story, but there was one line in this story. It's where the little mermaid turns to the sea witch and says, "But if you take my voice, what will be left of me?" My son and I looked at each other. And he said, "Mom, I'm going to tell my son the same thing. I'm going to have the same talk. But maybe one day we won't have to have that talk where we have to decide, where I have to decide whether to have a voice or to live. One day, maybe I can have the voice and be able to walk like a man at the same time." Thank you.
Well, that's extraordinary. That's profound. Thank you very much. In Black literature, one of the iconic works is Invisible Man. And Sheila's story about the absence of a voice makes it even more poignant. Our next artists have a voice, and they are Shelley Ensor and Alice Dorsey, her mother. Shelley comes from a highly gifted musical family and possesses a rare, beautiful, and powerful voice. She sings with the Sisters in Harmony, who released their CD, Your Love, in 2001. She appears on the Ron Curran CD live at Blues Alley and sings with the Frederick Community College Jazz Band. She directs the men's choir and voices of faith at First Baptist Church of Baltimore. And for the Common Ground family in particular, we have to note that Shelley led the Common Ground Gospel Choir for 16 years and is revered at Common Ground on the Hill as one of its most inspired and respected instructors. She is accompanied on piano by her mother and mentor, Alice Dorsey, who is a pianist, keyboard player, and organist who has played for a number of churches in Baltimore and the voices of Freedom Choir and Social Security in Baltimore. I give you Shelley Ensor and Alice Dorsey.
I have no words to say after what Sheila said. We've all experienced what she said, and it's sad that we still have to, but it's a movement, and it's ever changing, but it's always moving forward.
Louder voice, please.
Excuse me? Oh. And so we're happy to be asked to be a part of this. Count on me through thick and thin, friendship that will never end. When you are weak, I will be strong, helping you to carry on. Call
beautiful. That was just wonderful. Shelley Ensor and Alice Dorsey. Our next artist, next guest, is Roxana Harlow, who is a Chicago native, an activist, sociology professor at Carroll Community College in Westminster, Maryland. She's an expert in the areas of race, gender, and social inequality. She has a passion for community and social justice. And she's also a poet. And tonight, she's going to share with us a poem reflecting some thoughts on recent events. Roxana.
Good evening, everyone. I wrote this poem after the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent reactions to it. And I had at the time a flood of conflicting emotions. So to get them out, I just opened up a blank document and I just started typing. And I looked and realized I'd unintentionally written a poem, and this is the outcome of that. So because this is emotion put into words, it's often hard for me to get through this without getting teary and emotional. So I might have to take a moment to compose myself, but I'll be fine. Hopefully I'll be able to get through this without the waterworks though. So this is titled, Why Not the Others? Because that was what was on my mind when I wrote this, and it's the first thing that I wrote on the page. So why not the others? So many marching in the street, fighting back with their feet, shouting, Black Lives Matter. So many more white faces who now grace us. I wonder why our lives didn't matter before. Shot down at the store or in our home or on the curb. And yes, posted on video for all to see. But the reaction of most was, that wouldn't be me. They should have this or should have that, and never fought back from police as they feared for their lives or struggled to breathe or played in the park or were secured on their knees. Even those who complied with all officers' orders and did nothing wrong, that is, short of living and breathing and loving while Black, they still weren't enough to convince the white masses to flood the streets and shout, we will no longer have it. For my white friends who cried out long before now, this isn't about you, but it is too. About you and me and what we see and don't see, what we hear and don't hear, and who we can and can't be. It's time to come clean, to own up to the crimes this nation commits on Black and brown lives. Breaking your own laws to reinforce white dominance, take what you want through state-sanctioned violence, while requiring those you oppress to be peaceful, to beg for our lives in a way deemed permissible and convenient, that doesn't disrupt or upset or challenge the hypocrisy of a nation built on ideals of freedom, while instead it thrives on pain, blood, and trauma, and relief that never comes. It thrives on the abuse and oppression of others, and death by state violence continues to smother us. It's viewed as protecting the American dream for those who are worthy and good and esteemed, which usually means white with money and things. It supports white dominance. I don't understand why it took so many beatings and deaths and torture aplenty to awaken folks' conscience. With Floyd so impassioned, it's strange how that's happened. It's not that I'm not happy about this significant change. At least we're beginning to say their names. But speaking words of inclusion or erecting a plaque is no longer enough to really fight back. A reform here and there, a law changed, and more training will not solve the centuries of chaining and maiming and degrading and violating, or the suppression of voices and hearts and our histories, opportunities to learn and invest and be fully free, to become healthy and whole, both physically and mentally. And don't step to me with all lives matter. And how can I help you all is a phrase that unintentionally flatters yourself. Racism is more about you than me if you're white, and hurts all of us. So I want you to see that this is a fight, that this fight is at least as much yours as is mine, and you're helping yourself to see justice realized. So who will be there when the fight is just more than a tweet or a protest or boycotting a store? Who will be there when real justice means fully sharing the opportunity pie and the dream? Who's willing to demolish our current cultural frames that shackle the oppressed, then say they are to blame, that associate Blackness with danger and violence, laziness and ignorance and assumptions of incompetence? Who will be there when real justice means giving up all the privileges you struggle hard not to see? Who will be there when real justice for all means sharing white spaces and answering the call to proactively make your schools and communities, your workplaces and events diverse and equitable and anti-oppressive in the sense that all fully share in the power and privilege and freedom and justice that was promised but never fulfilled for us? Who will face their own racism within, born of this country's original sins? Who will be willing to consistently work to undo the 400 years that it took to rationalize the oppression that built the US, a country that proclaims it values life, liberty, and justice? It'll surely be me, working as I always do, and I sincerely hope that it will also be you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roxana. Poignant also, and with a lot of questions to be answered that everybody's got to be involved in answering. Our next artist is Guy Davis. Guy is a musician, storyteller, author, and actor. Been turning out chart-topping, award-winning blues since his debut in 1995. Guy's latest album, Sonny and Brownie's Last Ride, received a Grammy nomination, as well as nominations for the 2018 Best Acoustic Artist and Best Acoustic Album by the Blues Music Association. His album, Kokomo Kid, was named 2016 Acoustic Record of the Year by Blues Blast magazine. Nominations for the Blues Association Acoustic Album of the Year 2016 and Acoustic Artist of the Year. He's the son of famed actor, civil rights activist, Ossie Davis, I mentioned earlier. Guy celebrates and expands the music and stories he learned at the needs of his parents and grandparents. This most recent recognition continues Guy's history of honors, including awards from the National Public Radio and the Blues Foundation, including the W.C. Handy Keeping the Blues Alive Award and 9 Handy Award nominations. Please welcome Guy Davis.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you so much, Common Ground family. Your words, your actions, and your spirits move me. They have moved me ever since I've known you. There's a song I wrote called God's Gonna Make Things Over One of These Days. People once were slaves, buried down in nameless graves. You know that God's gonna make things over one of these days. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. That's when the killing had just begun. You know that God's gonna make things over one of these days. It ain't right. It ain't right what the white folks did in Tulsa on that night. W. Tate raised was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. You know, God's gonna make things over one of these days. Black folks begging down on their knees, white folks hanging them up in trees. You know, God's gonna make things over one of these days. It ain't right, Lord, it ain't right what the white folks did in Tulsa on that night. There was money in Greenwood town, white folks burned it to the ground. You know, God's gonna make things over one of these days. Black doctor raised his hands up high, and they shot him just to watch him die. You know, God's gonna make things over one of these days. It ain't right, Lord, it ain't right what the white folks did in Tulsa on that night. Tell me, what did you learn when you watched my body burn? God's gonna make things over one of these days. When you hang me from a tree, raise me high so my people see. But God's gonna make things over one of these days. It ain't right, it ain't right what the white folks did in Tulsa on that night. One of these days, whoa, one of these days, God's gonna make things over one of these days. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful guy. God's going to make things over one of these days. And if God's going to make things over one of these days, then David Fakunle is probably the perfect person to hear from right now, because he is a self-described mercenary for change. He is involved in an effort to elevate people of African descent and anyone who feels divested from their truest self. He earned a PhD from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and prior to doctoral study, earned a BA in psychology and criminology and criminal justice from the University of Maryland at College Park. David's also an artist, and as an artist, he has utilized vocal and theater performance, African storytelling, and African drumming in the proclamation of truth for over 20 years. I give you now David Fakunle.
A farmer was walking back to his farm one day down the road, and he came across a baby eagle And when he saw that baby eagle, next to it were its two parents who were dead. The farmer had sympathy and empathy for that baby eagle and knew if he didn't do something, it would surely die. So he picked it up and he took it back to his farm. Now, the only birds that he had on his farm were chickens. And he figured something was better than nothing. So he put the baby eagle around with the chickens. And fortunately, the chickens accepted him. So this baby eagle continued growing and growing and growing. And because of the space that it was in, it was walking like a chicken, it was talking like a chicken, it was pecking the ground like a chicken. And the story went out from near and far that there was an eagle on this guy's farm that was acting like a chicken. And sure enough, people would come from the north, the south, the east, the west to see this eagle that was acting like a chicken. Now, the story eventually caught the ear of a naturalist, and the naturalist believed that the only reason the eagle was acting like a chicken is because that's all it knew. So he wanted to conduct an experiment. So he ventured to the farm, he met with the farmer, and there it was, the eagle that was acting like a chicken. So what he decided to do was to pick up the eagle, he put it on his forearm, he took it over to a fence and said, "You are an eagle. You belong in the sky, not on the ground. So what I want you to do is to spread your wings and fly." The eagle looked around, it looked at the naturalist, it looked down to the ground and saw its fellow chickens. What did it do? It hopped off the naturalist's arm and started acting like a chicken again. The farmer was wondering why this naturalist cared so much. But the naturalist said, "Let me come back tomorrow." So the naturalist came back the next day, and it took that same eagle and it took it to the highest building on the farm, which was the barn, and held the eagle up in his arms again and said, "You are an eagle. You are meant to fly around in the sky, not be there on the ground. So what I want you to do is to spread your wings and fly." The eagle looked around again. It looked to the sides, it looked up, it looked down. And when it looked down, it saw the chickens again. And as soon as it saw the chickens again, it hopped back off the naturalist's arm and started acting like a chicken again. Now, at this point, the farmer was no longer amused and was sick of having his time wasted. So he said, "Okay, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but why don't you just let the eagle act like a chicken? That's all it knows. Just let it be. It's not bothering anybody. It seems okay with that." The naturalist said, "Give me one more day." The naturalist came back the next day. It took that eagle up to the highest point in the village, far away from the farm. All you could see was blue and clouds. Put the eagle on his arm and said, "You are an eagle. This is where you belong. This is where you should be." And the eagle looked around and it looked down, but all it could see was clouds. So it looked back up, and what did it see was a bird that looked just like it, flying around majestically in the sky. So what did that eagle do? It jumped off. And it was fluttering a little bit at the beginning, but after a while, it figured out the gait and started to flap its wings, just like that other bird that it saw in the sky. And with a loud shriek, the eagle was gone. There are a lot of people right now that are finally realizing that they were eagles all along. There are people out there that always had the inkling that they were eagles and never had that push. The push is here. The eagles are flying, and we're not going back to the barn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. It's a wonderful, wonderful story with a powerful message. Our next guest is Lea Gilmore, who was named by Essence magazine as one of the 25 women shaping the world and is a past winner of the Blues Foundation's Keeping the Blues Alive Award for her historical work on women's contributions to that music. Lea is the recipient of the 2016 Golden Wormstone Award from Baltimore's Creative Alliance for her efforts with community arts and commitment to social justice. She was named one of the first recipients of the James Baldwin Medal for Civil Rights for her work championing LGBTQ equality. Lea served 4 terms on the Maryland Advisory Board for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, worked diligently for reproductive justice for Native American women, and or as is the case for so many of the artists this evening, I could go on and on and on. But right now, I give you Lea Gilmore.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. It's like coming home. It's been a few years that I've had the pleasure of being here at Common Ground. I am just overwhelmed by these presentations tonight. Thank you for feeding my soul. Thank you so much for uplifting me. Roxana and Sheila, my sisters, I'm just really just flying. I'm flying. So I'm going to sing a song tonight that I heard Nina Simone sing. Oh, and I'm not going to play the piano because I'm going to sing it just like this, just me. I heard Nina Simone sing this song when I was about 20 years old, which was just 2 years ago. Okay. Okay. And so she said, this is really a Blind Willie Nelson song, but she said, nobody's fault but mine. If I die and my soul gets lost, it's nobody's fault but mine. I take that to heart because I think, no matter what my ancestors have done, no matter what anyone else has done, it is my responsibility to fight for justice for my people. It is our responsibility to take it up. I used to say, somebody should do something about that. All these things are so bad. Somebody should do something. Well, I'm going to be that somebody. And I'm so glad that you guys are too. So sing with me if you know this. Nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine. If I die and my soul gets lost, it's nobody's fault but mine. Sing it with me now. Nobody's fault but mine. No. Nobody's fault but mine. If I die and my soul get lost, it's nobody's fault but mine. Now listen here. I had a mother, she could pray. Yes, she could. I had a mother, she could pray. Oh, yes. But if I die and my soul get lost, it's nobody's fault but mine. Hallelujah. Nobody's fault but mine. No, no, no. Nobody's fault but mine. If I die and my soul get lost, it's nobody's fault but Leah's. Now, I knew a deacon, he could pray, my Lord. I knew a deacon, he could show no pray. But if I die and my soul get lost, it's nobody, no, nobody's fault but mine. Oh, no. Nobody's fault but mine. Sing with me. If I die and my soul get lost, 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 it's nobody's fault but mine. Yeah, yeah. Hallelujah. Amen.
Wonderful. Nobody's fault but mine. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that concludes our concert for this evening at just about an hour. As among other things, there's a tendency to want to sum up, make a summation, to the jury or something, obviously that's impossible tonight. You can't sum up everything that we've heard, in a couple of words. I think you just take the music, take the words, and take them to heart, because they were all meant from the bottoms of the hearts of the people who that you heard from. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us. And I think, as Walt mentioned before, this program is going to be aired again next Thursday.
Tim, there's one more act to go. Sankofa.
Oh, okay. At the beginning, okay, very good. Let me introduce now Kibibi and Ajanku is known most broadly for her connection to Sankofa Dance Theater, which is the Baltimore-based performance company, noted as a dance and drum troupe that features creativity drenched in the traditions of the historical Mali dynasty. They convey new world choreography and texture on the shoulders of the old world authentic traditions of Africa. Ajanku has traveled the African diaspora to study, teach, and perform with many masters, and most recently spent time embedded in the Cuban arts and culture sector in the city of Havana, entrenched in the dance, song, and rhythm of the Orisha, as well as creating mosaic works inspired by the landscape. She's continuously involved in programming that expands awareness, builds insight, and connects people. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Sankofa.
about moving negative energy, opening the way for positive and creative and constructive energy. It's very much about bringing that positive and great energy to your soul, to your spirit, so that you're stronger and you can share in open ways for others. Everybody's spoken about it this evening. Everybody's spoken about it this evening. And our work is deep, it is strong, it is important, it is urgent like no other in no other time. That's right. We've witnessed many things. We've witnessed many wrongs. But right here in this time, we are the ones that will come out of this thing changed. Let our words touch your heart. Let our songs touch your soul. Let our rhythms be inspiring. Grow better. Be better. Do better. It's as simple as that. But you know, simple things take the most courage. Be steadfast in the righteousness of the thing. Be better. Humanness is what you draw on. Be better. Can you say that again? Can you say that again? Humanness is what you draw on. Be better. Take us out with song, Brother Jumoke. We sing this marvelous song. We calling on positive praises. We're saying, we're calling for the Creator to open the way, to open the path, to rain down on us the strength that it takes to be better, to dig deeper.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sankofa. I said a little bit earlier, and it turned out to be somewhat premature, that we were finishing. And I said that, you know, I couldn't really sum up. But those words that we just heard are certainly fitting words to conclude this evening's concert with. Thank you very much, everyone, and stay tuned, please.
What a wonderful concert by our instructors at Common Ground on the Hill. We invite all of you to take part in Traditions Weeks. We will be here, commongroundonthehill.org. Go there and find out how you can become a part of this and work out your karma. Work out your karma together with all of us. I'd like to let you know that tonight is open mic night at the gazebo, the virtual gazebo. So check it out on YouTube if you'd like to take part, sing a song, listen to some music at 10 o'clock. God bless you all. Good night.